Okay, since I love to troll people with the image of this strong leader here, I guess I should talk about what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in the world, what's going on with the United States a little bit here. Now, dumb rubes think that Vladimir Putin wants to bring back the Soviet Union. He wants to bring Russia back to its former glory and reestablish the Soviet Union. Well, the thing about it is according to one memoir that was published, one biography that was published by, it looks like a family member, and I can't find the book online yet. Not in this short period of time, but this checks out from multiple sources that this was written in this book. It looks like by one of his relatives. That Putin's comments on the 1991 coup that was attempted to prevent the Soviet Union from falling apart, Putin, we know, stayed out of it. Now, he wasn't really high ranking at the time, but he was in the KGB. It would have been in his best interests to join the coup. The Soviet Union continuing would have been in his best interests. By all accounts, I don't see why it wouldn't be. So apparently he said, as soon as the coup began, I immediately decided which side I was on. And then it says, although he also noted that the choice was hard because he spent the best part of his life with the organs. So, as a person who's been around a lot of spooks, at least one spook in particular, my dad, that is an appropriately cryptic remark from a spook. So, what his motivations for staying out of the 1991 coup? No one will probably ever know. But the fact of the matter is, at the one point when the Soviet Union could have been preserved, the 1991 coup, which I basically witnessed, I was in Europe at the time. Things got a little crazy. People were scared. People thought it would be World War III. At the one point, the best time the best time to preserve the Soviet Union, Putin decided to stay out of it. That's because Putin, at least today and probably back then, I'm willing to assume back then he wasn't a communist. Now what we do know is today he is a nationalist. He is a Russian nationalist. He wants what's best for Russia and the Russian people. That's kind of what a fucking leader is supposed to do, isn't it? Or would you rather have corrupt fuckfaces like what we have right now? I'd take someone like him any day of the week. Okay? I really would. Oh, he's brutal. He's a killer. He's a killer. Really? So, Dick Cheney is not a killer. George Bush Jr., he's not a killer. They started a war that killed over 1 million people on false pretenses to keep the Saudis happy, to keep the petrodollar going just a little bit longer. And they're not the only ones. The next president, President Obama, was he not also a killer when he started the war in Libya, the war in Syria, and the war in Yemen? Was he not all? And then again, I take that back. Syria, no, I'm pretty sure. U.S. operations, covert and otherwise, started in Syria during the Obama administration. So too in Yemen. So too in Libya. What's the combined death toll of those three wars? It's probably close to 1 million as well. How many wars has he started? I think I can only think of Chechnya. Uh, what's the death toll of Chechnyan Civil War? Chechnyan War, according to Wikipedia. Let's see if we can find it. Second Chechnyan War, which is what Vladimir Putin started in order to basically pump up his political career, possibly, but also because he thought it needed to be done. So look, we have the total casualties right here: 50,000 to 80,000. Others estimate 150,000 to 250,000. That doesn't even compare to Iraq, and it doesn't compare really to Syria. Syria, we have 500,000 people died, and the United States had a lot to do with inciting and making that war worse. So who's the real killer here? I mean, it's so hypocritical to me. Right now, and let's go to Trump. Trump escalated Yemen and looked the other way while the Saudi Arabians continued their genocidal campaign in Yemen and helped them as much as he could without sending troops directly. You know, they can just send private security contractors. You know, U.S. private security contractors can go into Yemen, paid for by perhaps the CIA or a variety of other agencies, and they never have to disclose it to the public. There's no way you can find out through a Freedom of Information Act request. So I'm willing to bet that besides special forces and CIA type covert ops, there's also private security contractors in Yemen right now on the American taxpayers' dime murdering people. And that's just to keep Saudi Arabia happy so they keep selling oil to us. You know, you Americans are pathetic hypocrites. And I'm one of you, I hate to say it. But let's get back to this. I get mad every time I start talking about this stuff. So, in, what was it, Libya, recently, didn't we have, I think we did, let me see if I could find it. Recently, we had some emails leaked and the real reason, let me see if I could find it. Just to add insult to injury here, okay? This is an older story, but a goodie. This is an oldie, but a goodie. And you never heard about it because it was during the 2016 election. A bunch of emails got leaked of Hillary Clinton. This is from the Hillary Clinton, Julian Assange email leaks. And here we have the real reason why the United States was involved in Libya, and it had nothing to do with helping people. It had everything to do with preventing Gaddafi from forming an African Union so that a bunch of African countries can get together in economic cooperation, complete with a gold-backed currency. Okay? That's why we went into Libya. That's why we killed Gaddafi. And I'm sure there was oil was another motive. And I'm sure, you know, contractors that were close to people in Washington also pushed for the war so they can go in and rebuild the buildings that were bombed out. Okay? So, I don't know. You're going to have a hard time convincing me that this guy has done more damage in the world than, for example, Hillary Clinton or George Bush, even Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the least insane psychopath of the last three administrations, but he just didn't know how to handle the Washington swamp. I don't think anybody can. So we have this situation in Ukraine. You know, if you go to the news right now, you search Ukraine on DuckDuckGo. I refuse to use Google for anything. DuckDuckGo, news, Ukraine, and this is the kind of shit you get. Putin won't, this is a good one, USA Today. Putin won't stop with Ukraine. Why Americans should care about Russia's aggression against its neighbor. What the fuck? You know, you had a little bit of a stock market issue today because of Ukraine tensions. I would think these people are on Wall Street are smart enough to understand bullshit propaganda when they see it, but apparently not. Russia will never in a million years invade Ukraine. He might invade eastern Ukraine, but he would never invade Ukraine as a whole. He would never move on to Kiev. He has no interests in Ukraine except for the Russian-speaking population of eastern Ukraine. It's exactly the same thing as with Crimea back in 2014. During the Soviet times, a lot of Russians moved to places like Ukraine, even before that. With Crimea, Crimea was Russian territory since Catherine the Great, since the 1700s. When the Soviet Union fell apart, Ukraine got perhaps a bit more than it should have, perhaps a bit more than it could chew. The Russian-speaking population, vast majority of the population there are Russian-speaking. They don't want to live under the Ukrainian government. They don't really integrate well with the Ukrainians. They'd rather be a part of Russia. Same was true in Crimea. If they were allowed to hold a referendum today, a legit referendum, they would separate from Ukraine and join Russia. It would be a landslide. Now they're saying and of course there's always, who knows who's telling the truth in any of these situations, but they say they're being mistreated by the Ukrainian government. It's possible that the bureaucracy is not fair with them. Russia and Ukraine have been at odds for 1,000 years. This goes back to when the original inhabitants of Ukraine, or the descendants of current Ukrainians, the Vikings, who were called Vergarians, okay, by the locals there, they sailed down one of the rivers, I think the Volga River, some river, and they settled in Ukraine. They formed the state of Kievan Rus, okay? They are not Russian. They are culturally different from Russians. They don't speak Russian, okay? So, and they've had problems for thousands of years, for 1,000 years or more. I'd say a little more than 1,000 years. Starting in around 900, 800, that's when you start seeing the Vikings sail down the rivers, and they start settling there. They liked it there. They stayed there. The people around them, they didn't want them there. They fought. The Vikings were able to fight off the people that were trying to push them out. Therefore, they get to stay there. That's how it works. Okay, but they've been at odds 4,000 years nonstop. These people, it's not like a Ukrainian citizen and a Russian citizen would hate each other, but there's been political problems between the two countries for 1,000 years, and that runs very deep. It's kind of like the Sunni Shia split. It's about the same length of time. But Vladimir Putin has no interests in taking over the entire country of Ukraine. The only thing he has interest in taking over is the region where the majority of the population is Russian, which is the eastern region. Another thing Vladimir Putin has interest in is selling natural gas to Europe. Now, they have a pipeline going through Ukraine from Russia. Let's see if I could find it on here. There is a pipeline. I think this was constructed under Gerhard Schroeder, if I remember correctly, if my my knowledge as a German citizen serves me correctly. So let's see if I can find a pipeline map Russia. Pipeline map Russia. You know, if you just look at some of these pipeline maps, you can see a lot. So here goes. I believe this is it. Zoom in. So, gotta go this way though, don't I? Okay, there goes Belarus. There goes Ukraine. So, we're going to move this over. This will be fine. So over here, this is the major pipeline system starting way back here. They're all going through here by Moscow. Okay, some of them go through Ukraine and then into Europe. Okay. Many of this stuff will end up in Germany through these pipelines. That is the current system. They want to build a new pipeline that will bypass Ukraine and go straight to Germany. That is what Nord Stream 2 is about. So here goes the new pipeline. This is Nord Stream 2, bypassing everything, going through the Baltic Sea and straight to Germany. It would deliver a massive amount of natural gas. It would make the pipelines that go through all of these outlying countries less relevant. Ukraine doesn't want that, obviously. Neither does the United States, because the United States has some influence in Ukraine. So this is why they're talking about the Nord Stream 2 pipeline so much. So there's two big issues going on with Ukraine. A, the Russian-speaking population doesn't want to live there. B, Nord Stream 2 pipeline, no bueno for Ukraine. Because if the pipeline doesn't run through their country, they can't get leverage over Russia as a result. And the United States, with their leverage in Ukraine, loses a lot of control over the energy politics, which is what really is all of our wars are really about. Either energy politics or banking or a combination of the two. He might invade eastern Ukraine on the pretense of allowing eastern Ukraine to reincorporate with Russia. Okay, so this is the real background of what's going on. Now, why are we hearing about this in the news? Now, why is this a problem? It's been a problem for a long time. Why is the media talking about it now? I guess they have nothing else to talk about. War is always a ratings grabber, right? So here we go. Why? All these tensions, stock markets freaking out. What's really going on? Biden being antagonistic. Obviously, his presidency is failing. I knew it would. I'm kind of glad it is. I'm kind of glad he got elected. Because I hate the federal government. There's nobody better to just wreck the fucking federal government than that guy Biden. I'd like to see him get reelected. Just put the federal government out of their misery. It's great. So we got Biden. He wants to saber rattle a little bit. He's not going to start a war. The United States is not going to get involved in a war in Ukraine. But he will saber rattle. And then behind the scenes, they'll have diplomatic talks, and the United States will probably give most of the concessions. And then Biden will come out of the talks and say, wow, we really showed those Russians. And you'll never know what actually went on. Just like what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis. The American public wasn't told that the United States gave Russia, the Soviet Union, significant concessions in the Cuban Missile Crisis affair in order to get Russia to take missiles out of Cuba. In essence, we had to remove our missiles out of Turkey. I believe it was Turkey. But the American public didn't hear about that until many years later. Likewise, what's going to happen here is a bunch of saber rattling. The news will milk every drop of ratings they can get out of it. The weapons companies will sell every weapon they can sell to Ukraine. At the end of the day, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline will be completed, and it's quite likely that eastern Ukraine is going to become a part of Russia. And there is nothing the United States can do about it. People, like the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, like the Abbasid Caliphate, like the Ancien Regime, I don't know how to pronounce it, the ancient regime, they used to call it, like the monarchies of France, the Habsburgs. Our ruling regime is in decline. It is declining. Our federal government, which is our ruling regime, essentially, and the people, the crackpots who run this country, is in decline. This is going to be round 2 of embarrassing geopolitical events. This is going to be the second major embarrassing geopolitical event of this administration. And this just shows, if it comes out like I think it's going to come out, to me, the decline of the United States is inevitable and impossible to stop. First, we had Afghanistan. It's very important when you're talking about world diplomacy and geopolitics for a country to show its best face and not make total asses out of themselves. Because once they are seen as weak or incompetent, other countries will take advantage of that. And that's exactly what's happening now. And China's going to do their thing. Russia's going to do their thing. Germany and a few other European countries, they're not on board with the United States' position of no concessions to Russia. They need the oil or natural gas. They need it. So they're not going to get on board. The only ally we're going to have in this, of course, is the UK. For now. Because the UK really has had a long-standing rivalry with Russia going back, again, to Catherine the Great. Crimean War, was a lot of British involvement in that. The British saw that the Russians were trying to build a navy, and they wanted to stop them at all costs. They wanted to maintain their naval hegemony over the world, and they saw Russia as a direct threat. So they entered into war with Russia. That began this rivalry between the UK and Russia that goes back hundreds of years, which the United States kind of got pulled into by default. So people, I'm just going to tell you right now, first of all, it's unlikely we're going to get into a war with Russia. This is how this is going to turn out. It's going to be a lot of saber rattling, and then the United States is going to get embarrassed again. Because, folks, the federal government of I'm not saying the United States as a concept is in decline. I think that if the federal government falls apart, it may be the best thing for the United States as a concept. Because let's not forget that the original intention of the United States was to be a union of sovereign states with a very limited federal government. And we've been heading more and more to centralization ever since, really from the beginning. We started this inexorable uh, march towards more and more centralization. But like every empire, the bureaucracies get too big, the ruling regimes get too corrupt, and it falls apart like a house of cards, and nobody can stop it. Not, of course, not Biden. He's helping. He's helping to for us to realize it. But Trump couldn't stop it. DeSantis can't stop it. Not even Tulsi Gabbard could stop it, even though I'd like to look at her every day. I'd rather look at her every day on TV than this guy. But nobody can stop it. We are a herd moving in a certain direction. You can't stop a herd of wildebeests. Well, you can manipulate things a certain way, but we are maybe not the best. We are a river, okay? A river. And you can't change the course of that river, okay? This is how human societies have always worked. So just deal with it and get ready for it. And what I would do in closing is remember to think locally. Let's focus locally on our local jurisdictions. Forget about Washington, D.C. They are a lost cause. It's only a matter of time before there is a monetary and fiscal crisis, and then they're not going to have any money, people. Okay, it's going to happen. States are already starting to say, fuck the federal government. I'm not going to do that. You have in Missouri, they did something where they said sheriffs can arrest federal agents. We're down here in Florida, we're doing our own thing, and we're better for it. And other states see that, and the United States federal government is losing legitimacy. A big hit on that legitimacy is what happens on the world stage. Afghanistan was a huge hit, and this is going to be the next hit. I've been surprised before, I've been wrong before, but I just think this is just going to be saber rattling. And I think at the end of the day, once again, the United States is going to get embarrassed because, folks, the emperor has no clothes. The mandate of heaven is almost gone from the United States ruling regime. Legitimacy is extremely important. Without legitimacy, a government has no power despite its resources, despite its administrative structure, and despite its military. A government can pull out all the stops, play every trick, try every intimidation tactic. Without legitimacy, they have no power. And the United States government is losing its legitimacy. And this is the next chapter in that. Is it going to take as long as Rome took to decline, a few hundred years? Or is it going to be fast, like what happened to the Ming Dynasty in China in the 1600s? It could go either way. Will it be violent? Could be. It could be peaceful. One thing I can tell you, one thing that keeps me optimistic about this is that we have in our system a very unique system with the 10th Amendment, the idea of sovereign states and checks and balances between those states and the federal government. I think that if anybody can pull off a peaceful and productive decentralization, it's the United States. No other country has a system. Maybe another country does, but it's rare for this to have this sort of system where smaller administrative divisions, the states, have quite a bit of power. This was inevitable. This was going to happen. It might as well happen now. So just get used to it. Have fun. Hopefully, God forbid, there is no war. Who knows what the CIA is trying to cook up right now? Probably some sort of false flag. Russia expects a provocation, I'm sure. The thing is I believe it's likely there will be no war, and it'll end up with the United States really being embarrassed once again. But you never know. This is a tense situation, and Americans need to wake up. They need to wake up. Stop reelecting these assholes that are sold out, that have sold out to the weapons companies. This could end very badly for all of us. You understand? There, a nuclear war between the United States and Russia, it would destroy. I think it would destroy the world, but at the very minimum, it would completely destroy the United States and Russia. You would be, if you live in the United States or Russia, you would be dead. I would be dead. We all would be dead. We need to stop this shit. We need to stop electing people who are corrupt and sold out to the weapons companies, okay? And the only way to do that, though, the only way this problem is going to be solved is if that federal government house of cards falls. I'm out. Once I find OBS, I'm out.